right, gentlemen. Is that lively enough for you there, Philip?
Get him there. That's a 75%. Actually, that's an 8. That's an 8 out of 10.
Hey, 8 out of 10? I could deal with that.
Yeah,
Welcome, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Living Room. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend. Don't know what you've been up to yesterday, Saturday, and today, Sunday, but I hope it's been great. And thank you for joining us. For those of us who are joining new, this is The Living Room. We are We Global. I'm Andre. That's Philip. That's Mark there, who just jumped out having a few technical difficulties. But that just tells you we are live. And when you're live streaming, things happen every now and then. If you don't know who we are, We Global, we just started this because we believe that Caribbean people are the best people to tell our own stories. And the show we started, Living Room, is all about people coming over to your house, having a drink, a cup of tea, whatever it is. And then at the same time, we right the world's wrongs with conversation. As West Indian people, that's what we do. And we have a laugh. And Mark has been accident prone the last few weeks. So I am not surprised today, Philip, to tell the truth. So I'm Mark. I'm Andre, and that's Mark and Philip. There you go. You see, he always distracted. But thank you guys for joining us. Guys, how we doing? Let's get to it.
No, we good.
You good?
Right, Mark?
You all right there?
I all good, man. All good, man. All good.
You sure you had the accident in the stool last week? Today, you okay?
I good,
man. What you guys been up to, man? What's been up this week?
Well, I just carrying on the holiday, you know.
You on your second week, right?
I going into my second week now, man. I had a pretty good week one. You know, we took the boys to on a bit of a journey this week. Took them to show them where we used to live when we first moved to England, which was a little bit of an episode.
Oh, is this Huddersfield?
Yeah, we went to Huddersfield and then we took a trip down to Oxford and, just doing a little bit of a university trail because, the oldest one is starting to look around, so.
Oh, you're trying to give me some inspiration. So Oxford, you start, because it's start at the top, right?
Well, I tell you, we used to live in Oxford, and I went to Oxford Brooks, the other one up the hill, not the one down in the city. So, yeah, exactly.
What do you think of the different places you took them?
Well, Huddersfield was a bit of a if you want to see how coronavirus and the downturn the economy has hit a northern town, go and visit Huddersfield. Oh my goodness, man!
Okay,
it is just felt really disappointing.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, decimated completely. A very different place, but that is part of the journey. But it was great to share that with them. That was one of the things that we got up to this week, which was good, man. What you feel? What going on in Manchester, man?
Yeah, everything is alright out here, man. We had some. The last few days we had some decent weather. So I'm British now, so talking about weather.
Aye.
We've been here too long, man. Every
Yeah,
conversation start with whether you're British.
Yeah.
Or very influenced, let me call it that.
Yeah,
for sure.
What I liked about last week is that during the day it was sunny, and at night it was rainy. So you could still sleep a bit. What else has been up? I actually decided to take some holiday this week as well.
Well, finally.
I can't understand this man. This man just light work, man.
I did.
Well, I enjoy what I do. And
Yeah, you still
the
got.
truth is that it isn't just work that I keep doing, but there are loads of other things I like to just get involved in as well.
Man, you got your hand enough boys, man.
Yeah, too many.
You understand? enough place, man.
I went for a nice 15k run.
Who you?
What, today?
Yep.
Shoot, man. You get in there. And you still on me.
Definitely still on me.
All right, then. And you make it wrong. You don't walk and run. Tell the truth, man.
No walk and run.
What kind of pace,
I never walk.
Oh, probably eight minutes a kilometer today, man. He probably at 8. He might as well be walking.
It wasn't meant to be 15k, but I started to ramble a bit.
Okay. You get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought so. You get lost a bit. Like, let me just keep ready till I make it back.
Exactly.
Wow.
I got
Impressive, though. Impressive, I have to say.
Impressive. I still on my 5 and 10s,
Yeah,
I drop off Strava now, so I don't bother with the Strava now. I going back to what you talk about before. You talk about run for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for the time. I find the endurance is built up there, so I get in there.
So we got planned for the week, though.
Unless you run 25 minutes, then you can share that.
Listen to you.
All right, then. He's showing off on we know, man.
So where you going for your week off, though? Just with the interest?
We were thinking of of going up to Newcastle, but looking at the weather,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a bit of a turn off.
Man, Newcastle is a hidden gem in England. You know, one of the
I'm pretty sure
greatest
just looking
cities
at-
in the country, man.
I mean, it would be good if it was sunlight and you could see a bit of nature because there are no museums open and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But I feel like traveling in rain.
Oh,
Might not
well,
be good.
Especially
Oh, okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Why?
under these conditions.
That is when you know a man is a true West Indian. When
The
the rain
rain
fall,
set up. not falling.
down home.
It's
Not falling.
these are
Rain falling, stand home. You ain't going anywhere. You ain't going anywhere.
But these are precarious times as well. This is, I think the lifetime of the coronavirus is extended under rainy conditions.
You think so? Well, that might be
Oh,
true.
yes.
There might be something in
Pretty sure
that.
it is.
There might be something in that.
Right.
So you need sunlight.
All right.
need sunlight.
We might. Okay, interesting.
All right. We know somebody that might give you a good sunlight here, even if
Yeah.
just
All right.
lightly.
And I don't think it's just a theory.
Hold on to
Oh,
that
you don't,
thought.
don't worry about that. Hold on to that, man. Hold on to that thought. Hold on to that.
Wow.
But listen, guys, so much happening in the region recently. You know, we see with the reopenings all across the region. We're seeing I don't want to call it a second wave because I kind of somehow don't feel like we actually made it through the first. I just think things were a bit delayed for us because of how we dealt with it in the early stages. But now we're seeing a ramp up across the region in a lot of countries. So that's going to be interesting to observe. You know.
Yeah, I think so because you know we were so well praised across the world for the Caribbean's response,
And rightly so.
And of course, absolutely. And we got to now try and recognize that you know there has to be a sustaining of that excellence because if people start to get weary of you know we've done our part, we've had enough of this, we're going in fete or we having parties, you know, suddenly all of that good work is unraveling. So I think it's going to be really important for how we now continue to sustain what we were doing well and just holding the course.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there's probably been a bit of complacency where that's involved. You know, because I mean, a virus is something tricky to deal with. You can't really see it. You can only see the effects. You can only see the numbers that the media put out. As well.
Yeah.
So I think there was a little bit of complacency there, thinking, well, we've done well, and there's been a lot of praise for the way it's been handled. But as you said, Andre, it's probably not a second wave, but it could even be a reflection or rebounding of the first wave.
I
Crashing
think
and
so.
then came back.
And a lot of the cases in the region are imported too.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and I don't think it's a coincidence that this is happening when the different economies are trying to open back to tourism.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's the thing. And then here you see people gearing up for school. You know, here in the UK as well in the Caribbean as well. I think this is going to be a tricky one.
I think the most perplexing thing I heard this week was the government planning to shelve Public Health England for a new National Institute for Health Protection or something in the middle of a pandemic.
in the middle.
I was like, what?
I was perplexed, but given the way how the Minister of Health in the UK dealt with this, I wasn't.
No, but you get to realize how blatant it is, you know. People don't want to stand up and take the responsibility, but rather would want to blame the whole of Public Health England for the response and think that, you know, a new organization is going to do it so much better, which is ridiculous in my view.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but we'll see. But listen, everybody who's joined us, thank you again for joining us. We just want to say, if you're not a member of our Facebook page, just click like somewhere there, wherever you're watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Every week we do this, and we have just Caribbean conversations because we believe that even things outside the Caribbean, there's a Caribbean story within it. And we're going to bring you those in conversation. So thank you for joining, and just like the page, and you can join us and be part of the conversation as well.
Awesome.
So obviously, you know, the question that we have to ask every week is who have we got in the living room this week, man?
Well, it's interesting, you know, because what we at now? 15, 16 episodes? No, since we started. And we talk about so many things. And I think sometimes it's good then to take a pause because so much has happened in the region. Elections in multiple countries, changing the governments or a return of incumbents as well. We've got the reopening of the economy to tourism. We've got the demise of Liat and different people now trying to take its place. We've got, you know, second wave potentially. So we just thought, you know, let's take a pause and just have a conversation. And we thought, you know, what better way to do that than inviting some amazing guests into the living room this week to have that conversation with us. And, you know, our usual audience. So do you remember from episode 6, we had the Caribbean man himself, Julian Rogers,
Aye.
and he's going to join us again on this episode live. He's joined us on the recorded one, but he hasn't joined us live before. So we already warned him, write down all the things that he may not want to say.
Rogers is a live man. Rogers been doing live all his life.
But don't forget, this is different. This is the living room, and we bring all kinds of things.
So you might come with some red stripe.
Exactly. And I don't want that 45 minutes in, that.
The wrong thing slip out.
That's what I don't want, right? I want to make sure that he stay on top of things.
Yeah, of course.
And then, sometimes you meet people and you've never met them before, but you just click.
Yeah.
You just click. Yeah. And, we've been doing 15, 16 episodes. Mm-hmm. And as we do this, we promote it and what's not. But as you know, Mark, the promotion for this show just went through the roof when we put the names of the people who coming on today.
Yeah.
And that says something. One, we're doing the right thing and we're getting the right people and having the right conversations. Yeah. And then sometimes it's all about the person that you're bringing in.
Yeah.
And today we have Rhoda Bharath from Trinidad who will be joining us in the living room. Wow. To our usual audience, if you don't know who she is, trust me, by the end of today, you'll be happy that you've met her and you'll want to know even more about her as well.
The next soccer monarch in Trinidad.
I actually don't think she would dispute that, I don't think she. Whoa. But the soca with a message, I'm sure, though. Soca was a serious message.
My sort of thing.
By the time you finish chip down the road, you'll be like,
I didn't realize that, though.
I know, get what you said, though. So that's what we got. We got Julian Rogers and we got Rhoda Bharath from Trinidad who will be joining us. And we just having a conversation. This is what we do in the living room. We'll just see where it goes. So much has happened in the last 3-4 months in the region. We got some guests. We can have a couple of drinks and we can have a conversation. So I'm going to let those guys in now.
Come in. Rogers.
Man a yard.
Man a yard. How you doing? And how you doing, Rhoda? Ladies first, though. Ladies first. Rhoda, welcome to the living room. Let me say that.
Thank you very much, Andre, Philip, Mark, and of course, Julian. It is always great to see you. Andre, after an introduction like that, I feel I need to run out with a mic in my hand.
Yes. And drop it at the end, too.
And by the end, it can be a mic drop.
Yeah.
Of course.
I have no doubt. But welcome to the living room, Rhoda. It's amazing to have you.
It's amazing for me to be here, and of course, good evening, good night to your listening audience, because I know I'm in different time zones.
Different time zones here right now.
It's about 20 minutes past 3, and in the UK it would be about 8:30, 8:40.
Yeah, 20 past 8. 20 past 8.
Yeah. All right.
That's good. So welcome. And Mr. Rogers. Welcome, sir.
Julian Rogers, thank you very much. Generally, I genuflect when I see Julian. Right?
Hey. Rogers, how things, man?
Can I get a word in here?
Of course.
I don't know. I hope the audience is ready, but I brought along something to.
What?
Was that pepper sauce?
What's that got there?
What you got there?
Grace Green, what?
Green Scotch bonnet.
Whoa! You're hot.
Because I suspect we're gonna have a very hot session today. So. It's good to see you guys, and good to see Rhoda as usual. Well, we're here in Jamaica, very concerned about the spread of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes,
and anxiety really building up, particularly in view of the fact that we're in campaign mode for the general election on the 3rd of September. And though a lot of the usual campaigning activities have been restricted, there certainly is cause for concern, because we've got these spikes now, 98 in one day, 46 in another, and the introduction of new curfew hours, particularly for a number of areas, including Kingston itself. So the curfew will go in at 7 o'clock tonight until 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'd gone all the way back to 11 o'clock at night. But the fact is that a lot of people have clearly abused the situation or relapsed, as the case may be. The police had a raid of a club a couple of nights ago as well, finding a huge group of people there, etc. So we really have reason to be concerned. Though the Prime Minister said we shouldn't panic,
Right.
but everybody now really wants to be very, very careful about their movements and so on.
And what's the situation with schools there like now?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because there was all this talk about reopening schools in September. No, the education ministers pushed it back until October, early October.
Yeah,
Okay.
I saw they say they were going to revisit that.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens.
You're reopening in early October.
Yes, early October.
Well, we're not having a school term from September to December. So just to kind of add context on the southern end of the Caribbean, our figures have jumped significantly in the last 3 to 4 weeks. Today we had another death, so we're up to 14 deaths now. Now, Andre was making a very important point at the start of the program. We seemed to have it under control. We seemed to be doing a really great job managing the entire situation, and we'd had it at a point where we'd had, I think, 8 deaths, and we just kind of plateaued at 8 deaths and kept the numbers down. And then that changed within the last 3 to 4 weeks. So now we're up to 963 positive cases, which has us stunned because we were under 200 positive cases as of 2 to 3 weeks ago. So now 963 positive cases and 14 deaths, and there will not be any face-to-face school for the foreseeable future. So we're not having a term school is not reopening for face-to-face classes from September. So the Ministry of Education.
So let me ask you a question there, because I know you're a valuable educator. How do you think that's going to affect the youngsters across Trinidad, and particularly with not being in school physically?
Not being in school physically is going to have already there is an impact, right? So people are disoriented. I mean, I teach at the tertiary level here, and we would have gone within the space of 2 weeks, we had to go from face-to-face classes to virtual classes. Now we had platforms in place with respect to my e-learning. So UE was in a better position than say primary and secondary school. But to go from being able to interact with your students on a day-to-day basis, and then everything is happening via a screen and an online platform, you're disoriented. How you go about to assess people, all of those things disorient you. And then, of course, children, whether you're toddlers or teenagers, you need to have that socialization.
Absolutely.
It's important. That socialization is important. So I think that there has to be, without me having tangible figures to give you, there has to be some degrees of, depression. People are dealing with, whether it's mild or intense, there has to be some.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we had some teachers on a few weeks ago in one of the episodes, and we were talking about exactly that point. Especially, yes, children as well, but even for the teachers who've got to deal with their class, but then dealing with their own kids at home, dealing with the separation, and they're probably hearing some really, horror stories in some cases of children who may not have access, but then who might have not so good circumstances at home during this time as well. So the impact of depression is a real one for everybody.
It is,
including parents.
And of
including
course,
parents.
You're in right, exactly. So it's depression and disorientation for the adults. It's also depression and disorientation for the children, and everybody within their own, within their own paradigms, trying to navigate this new space together sometimes. So you have a whole house full of persons. I am a little bit more fortunate in that I'm not in a crowded living situation. But if you're in a crowded living situation, and as an educator, I've had the opportunity to see that. You start classes and the students have to apologize for the noise that will be in the background, because it's an entire household that would have been at home. food preparing in the kitchen, other siblings in another room making noise. In some instances, the house isn't a really big house, so they have to do their
Yeah.
class in a living room, and everybody
Yeah.
else operating out of the living room. So that's when you
Exactly.
begin to realize how important the physical structure of a school is for some persons. That learning at home, while you might have the technology, you may
Yeah.
have the technology, you may not necessarily have the space.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Stepping away from education a bit there in Trinidad, and we see this resurgence with the COVID cases now. Do you think the election, the season of campaigning, had an impact on that?
Oh my word. Yes, I do. And it for me it's a combination of things. And
I
what
got
I'm
another
gonna say,
question to follow up there too. But I'm
what I'm
answer
gonna
this one
say
first.
is, this is where we start getting controversial. So it didn't take very long. Two things. There was it's my informed opinion that human trafficking had a role to play in the spread, right? Because we would have locked down our borders, but you know that we're very close to Latin America, and
Yeah,
you
I
know
was
that
gonna.
Venezuela has
Okay.
its own immigrant crisis that's taking
Yeah, I
place.
know you got that
And-
issue. Yeah.
Right, and we're one of the way stations for when Venezuelans are seeking to migrate, and there is a thriving um, underground industry
Underground.
here.
Yeah.
Right? There's a thriving underground trafficking industry here, and
Yeah.
my understanding is that what would have happened is there were persons who would have been brought into the country, and those persons we're not quite sure who the actual first point of contact would have been,
Yeah.
but that's where this new spread would have started. And of
Right.
course, there are these comfort hotels that we tend to have where persons might be in need of a little bit of proximity and intimacy, etc.,
Yeah, yeah,
etc.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Comfort.
Right.
You need a comfort. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Comfort Inn.
Exactly. You know what? She had me confused there for 1 second, and then I was like, oh no.
Right. So there were persons who were in need of comfort, and they availed themselves of said
Aye.
comfort. Right. And in having availed themselves of said comfort, joy spread to the world.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And so what we have now is a situation where the virus would have gotten here. I'm reliably informed as a result of trafficking, and because of the trafficking, that would have caused a spread. And if it's here and you don't know exactly who has it, because that's the thing, it's difficult to do contact tracing in a situation like that. Because
Exactly.
if, let us say, Mark, would have availed himself of, that sort of comfort.
So
He-
why I got be the one that going for the comfort? I mean, jeez.
I don't know, but
Why I gotta be me?
one of these things just like the other. One of these things. Kind of
Right?
Well.
Okay, so Mark
You're a Mark man.
Not going with it, man. I go with you, Rhoda. I go
roll with
you.
it. Roll with it. Roll with it.
Keep
See where
going.
this goes.
I really keep going.
Mark can tell nobody, right? So Mark
Right.
then comes and he hangs out with you, Andre, and you, Philip, and you, Julian. And then next thing you know, Olia, of course, ain't realized that, he went and get himself some comfort. And thereafter, you all are hanging out with everybody else. Olia
Exactly.
probably went to a bar, right? Instead of sitting
Yeah,
down in
yeah,
your
yeah,
living room, you went to a bar. You're not wearing
Yeah.
a mask because
Yeah.
your comfort levels have
Yeah.
dropped. Be-
Contact
be-
tracing can be done nowhere near that after
your
that.
awareness
Yeah.
levels, your awareness levels have lowered because you think we have this under control. The last time we had a positive case was months ago. The last time we had
Yep.
a case was months ago. We ain't need to worry because the government has this under control.
And borders
And-
locked down and everything.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
lower your guard. The next thing you know, we have hundreds of positive cases,
Yeah.
and we're not necessarily in a situation to say or to be able to pinpoint where that one case came from. So it started off with, you heard about this adult, that adult. Then you started hearing about children because we had children preparing for the SEA examination. And so because parents in our household have it and they don't know, they're not aware. It passes on to the children. The children then go on to school.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
you have this thing, it just radiates after
Yeah.
that. Because you have parents and students and teachers from those various schools now having to go get themselves tested. The parents are working in banks, the parents are working in restaurants, and the next thing you know, this thing is all over the place. And to answer your question, Andre, we had campaigning, and not everybody, not all of the political parties were being responsible about how it.
But people themselves too, right? After a couple of campaign things, you can throw off the mask, pull the mask down to talk, and anything going back on.
From leadership all the way down to support base.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Not always being as responsible as they need to be.
Yeah. So Rogers, this point about comfort, you reckon that this is responsible too for what's happening in Jamaica, or yours is slightly different?
Well, I
don't call my name.
I will call your name, Mark, because growing up as a good Bajan, you did have comfort as a little boy, and that candy.
Oh, the candy. You had he lost there for a second, Julian.
I'm so glad you explained that. Yeah.
Even the night growing up.
He was about to.
Whoa.
Yeah. I'm not as definitive as Rhoda is in terms of how she identified a particular source for the increase here in Jamaica, but I can say that one of the key sources really in terms of the new cases is actually Jamaicans who have come home from North America, etc. And who have not kept quiet. They've not respected the isolation or the self quarantine, and so they've gone out to see their mama, their papa, their uncle, their aunt, all their old friends from school, etc. And that really is at the heart of the problems we're facing here in Jamaica. It's made it very, very difficult for contact tracing because people are not very honest as well about their activities and movements. So it's been very frustrating for the government to deal with this new situation. And when I watch the Prime Minister and Minister of Health, Dr. Tufton, I can see that they want to use some far stronger language than they are using in the press conferences, etc. While they're urging people to be responsible, at the same time, they really want to say, look, you guys are just putting everybody in danger, and this is not good. And it's also, and one of the big challenges, of course, is that Jamaica opened up for tourists, and yes, we have a special corridor of accommodation that will keep the tourists away from the regular population, outside, of course, the people who are serving them. But now they're under pressure. In fact, so much so to allow the tourists to go to other places and attractions and whatever
and to spend that money.
Where to spend money and sustain. So it really is a very, very difficult situation that they're facing. And I have to tell you, and I have to share the numbers with you as Rhoda did for Trinidad and Tobago just now. We had 1,413 with 1,413. We've had 817 recoveries, 16 deaths, and there are 580 active cases right now.
Wow.
That is a huge number.
It is.
And the spikes that we've had in the last couple of days, 98 in one day, 46 in another, really points to a very critical situation here in Jamaica. And with the election campaign in full force, you've got the Prime Minister and political leader of the Jamaican Labour Party urging both sides or all parties involved to make sure that their supporters really adhere to the protocols. But
not going to happen.
Well, I mean, he drove through a constituency in the last 24 hours, and his supporters just ran out to greet him, etc. Even though he wasn't stopping, because he said that one of the things is that yes, you can have these mini motorcades, so to speak, but that the vehicles must keep moving, etc., and be only occupied by the crucial people that they need to have within these vans, for instance, these coaches, 15 people, no more. But you can't get people to collectively respect the fact that how dangerous it is. And because, you know, they reached a point where, well, all right, nothing's happened so far.
Yeah.
And you know how it is in these situations. People don't get serious until it comes very, very close to them.
But what is the tone of media at the moment? Is media emphasizing how dangerous it still is, or has media gone a bit?
No. Everybody, all the media houses in this country have ramped up a very, very steady educational campaign. Companies themselves are doing a lot of work in terms of this. I mean, I can speak for our company at the Jamaica Observer, where we are literally picking up people from home and bringing them to work and taking them back home, because we want to avoid them using public transport. It's a costly matter, but it is an investment we have to make at this time. And I can speak for myself because I spent a weekend over on the northeast of Jamaica, in Portland, and one of the people that I fraternize with has been positive, so I immediately had to stay home and stay out of the thing. So far, so good. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, eyes crossed, whatever the case may be. But that was what, over 2 weeks ago. He's recovered.
Mina, I agree with Mina, the comment there on the screen where you're saying that, you know, election campaign is a COVID vehicle. I agree with that, because there's only so much. They're going to try for a week or so to be responsible. But once the passion and everyone is fighting for every vote and stuff, and the supporters, they're just going to come out and do stuff.
Rhoda,
you want to say something?
I want to say, Julian made a point there that, well, he made an observation about what is taking place in Jamaica. And I have to say this. We didn't have a situation where we had everybody, he just said everybody's on board with all of the health regulations and all of the protocols, right? And so I wanted to ask this. Because you would have at least two major political parties, much the same way we have two major political parties. Are both parties on the same page about COVID?
I would say that, you know, we talk about politicians here, and the fact is that the strongest objection so far, really, first of all, it was we need to open up the economy again, bring tourists in, etc. And then once it's opened up, etc., then you have there was selective opening ups. In other words, like bars and restaurants were, you know, like the last stage of the thing. You have the funerals and the weddings and all these numbers and so on. So that has been the kind of common position, so to speak, in terms of
leaders took the position of Donald Trump on this whole COVID situation.
Oh, nobody in this world would take the position of Donald Trump.
Don't say that.
Except Donald Trump.
Except Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a relative in Trinidad.
Okay, I knew. I know.
Enlighten us there, Rhoda.
Let me just finish this so that you see how. Let me make some ground for you to run on right now.
I like that. Give it a run away.
Yeah, I will say that both of the main political parties here have been very consistent in terms of their message to the general populace. They disagree in a couple of points in terms of you know, here and there, etc. And you know, seeking an opportunity to dig at the Prime Minister or the Health Minister, Dr. Tufton, etc. But I think there's a lot more commonality than there's been difference. So there's the Jamaica situation. Is that so if I may ask Rhoda a question, is that the same situation in Trinidad?
Thank you for allowing me to get this off my chest, Julian, because it is not the exact same situation in Trinidad and Tobago. For some odd reason, we have an opposition leader here who, from the jump, made statements that ran counter to what our public health officials would have been putting out into the public domain. So there is a narrative that there is no COVID here. that sunlight is what will kill COVID. So don't be worried about contracting COVID. Sunlight will kill it for you.
Sound like Donald for you, man.
Right? All you, so much so that an entire remix has been done of the opposition leaders' comments on a platform, because we said that all you need to do is go out and sit down in sunlight next to a standpipe, and that will sort the situation out.
Was that verbatim or was that just a paraphrase?
But no, I can find the clip for you and send it for you one of these days.
And next to a standpoint, like a communal standpoint where everybody goes.
I can't even
go and sit next to the pipe out in the sunlight, and that will cure the situation.
Sunlight
That's crazy.
Kill COVID.
It gets worse.
I see Janelle's comment there.
There's a situation there. One of our senators got up in the parliament. So this is on the Hansard, on our Hansard documents now, where he basically says that all you need, because this is when the state was putting in the public health regulations that bars needed to be closed. They came and debated for bars to remain open, because what you need is punch and rum and lime juice, and that will cure COVID, right?
Please explain what punching is, Anthony.
High proof rum, right? So like overproof rum is like must be 75% proof alcohol.
Wow.
So all you need is very strong white rum and lime juice, and that will kill COVID. And so these are our leaders. These are our parliament making those statements. Then when we made the choice to close the borders, they were actually looking to use legislation to get the borders reopened. So you had a lot of tension and pull and tug with respect to the policies.
But to what gain, though? Was it just opposition for opposition's sake?
Political expediency, because we want to have a society that is in a state of flux, where there's a lot of chaos and confusion in terms of messaging, and that all of those things play a role in exhausting a population when it comes to voting.
And so importantly, did their supporters echo that and believed in it?
Yes, yes. So there's this, there's a whole online narrative that I've been following, and in many instances attempting to challenge, where people are saying you don't need to wear masks. Don't harass me about wearing masks.
So Rhoda, so that is why my good friend Tim Gopi Singh turned out to be positive.
Yes, I saw that.
I could show you. I know that I put up one of the pictures. I made it my cover photo on my Facebook profile. The party he belongs to, they were campaigning regularly without masks, and I'm not talking about the supporters, because you can't control the supporters, but you individual leaders of the party, you can control yourself. So the opposition leader, no mask. The candidates, no masks. Senior members of the party, no masks. And invariably, they are, the messaging that they were sending, whether it was verbal or implied messaging. No, you don't need it. You don't need to wear masks, and you don't need to observe social distancing.
We should point out that Tim Gopi Singh is a doctor.
He is a doctor. He's a former Minister of Education. He was also one of the senior members of the medical staff of the Port of Spain General Hospital. Right. I think he might have been a senior person at one of the regional health authorities in Port of Spain in the very late 90s, turn of the century. So this is not a man who is not educated. And then there's actually, let me go down that path now.
A quick question though.
Particularly dangerous,
because we know the United States is extremely polarized right now. Is it the same in Trinidad? Because to me, you only take that position if you believe the polarization will actually help you.
Yes,
so is it the same in Trinidad? And is it around party lines, race lines? What?
We are polarized. We're polarized along party lines, and the way our politics works here, it's more so than it is class-based. There is class involved, there is religion involved, there is geography involved, but I would say it is more so ethnic than those other things.
But Rhoda, we know that we've always seen these historical contexts around elections in Trinidad, but there was something about the election that has just passed,
Yeah.
where you saw some language that you would not have, previously seen. Language we would have associated with what happened in Rwanda, for example. And where did that come from, and how is Mr. Rowley going to heal the divisions in the nation?
Huh.
Well, one. Let me say this. Let me start with the very last thing you asked. I
Yes.
can't answer for or speak for Dr. Rowley.
No, I
Okay.
wouldn't expect you to.
So
Fair point.
he is going to have to answer that question for you through his words and actions.
But if you know him, ask him to come on, and we can ask him ourselves.
No, I can't do that. Actually,
You can't- I tell you, I know you're the person to know. I'm
your partner, Julian. Right? Because I know lots of handsome, bald-headed men. I just let it know.
Well, thank you so much, man. Thank you.
I'm gonna count myself among that. I'm gonna go.
Scandalous.
To get back to Mark's question, Mark, the thing you need to bear in mind is the language that you've been seeing online recently ramped up as a result of the political campaign, but it's language and messaging that has been used on social media for at least 5 years now. So we would have had a government change in 2010, right? When that government change occurred in 2010, over the course of 2010 to 2015, there was the introduction of certain kinds of language into the public space, where people started to get very comfortable using negative words about Black people. And then by 2015 to 2020, the campaign became very frontal. And you had various blog pages and Facebook pages using the language in a very regular way. And then, of course, there were politicians using the language. I'm going to say opposition politicians using the language. There's one opposition politician. He's no longer an MP now because he stepped down for this election, of Indo-Trinidadian descent. And he would regularly put on a Rastafarian wig, right? And call himself Ras G, which is blackface, right? You are appropriating somebody else's
This is worrying stuff.
ethnic identity.
Yeah.
And he was while he was an MP, he was doing that on a regular, and nobody was calling. When I say nobody within the leadership of his party was calling him. Nobody was saying, "Hey, this is wrong."
What about the media? What about the media?
Was not calling him out on it at all.
Whoa.
Wow.
I think it would have been myself and a handful of persons who would have been saying, "Hey, this is wrong." And this is a man who eventually went on to say Chinese people is eat dog, right? And then he fat shamed some girl someday on social media. And I'm just using this as an example of how it became normalized from 2015 to 2020. So by the time the election got called in July, it was not a big deal to see
over.
the language explode even further when the election results came out, and people began to realize that they had lost the election, because they, at a point in time on the night of the results, they thought they had won the election. When they realized that there was a loss that had incurred, it just, it wasn't like on crack cocaine, really. That's what happened afterwards. It was just racism on steroids.
Yeah. But I guess as Kershel, who just said, we in the region now seeing it. Maybe because of social media, it's become more open to us to now see it. But it was probably there for a while, but we weren't seeing it,
Yeah,
So
I think people feel emboldened by social media now, because you can adopt a fake profile. You can put up, you can start.
You can
pages
hide.
and
Hide and say what you want.
You can hide. And you can put out all kinds of filth. I mean, what part of the reason, and I mean, this is the first time I'm saying it publicly, part of the reason I now, assume this persona with the wig and whatever it is. It's
Wait,
That's a wig?
wait.
You're here.
It's not my hair, Mom.
You know, bald head man got a thing for blonde wigs.
Yeah,
You see, I wasn't even thinking about it. You see when she chose you? You see? You see why she chose you? She
And
she
then let
didn't
you know
know.
that I have 3 blonde wigs, right? Just in case we need to switch it up.
You're terrible.
I do this now. I've received death threats
Wow.
for
Oh,
no
wow.
other reason than I'm outspoken. Now
Yeah.
imagine in the year 2020, in this the year of our Lord 2020, I have to be worried about my personal safety because I am outspoken. That is madness. But it's the
Indeed.
reality. It's the reality that you're dealing up with.
But outspoken is not a fair word to use as far as you're concerned.
What's that word?
Rogers.
Let me just say that I think what has happened in Rhoda's case, and I think that in a lot of ways Rhoda is very misunderstood by a number of people.
Okay.
And I'm a journalist, first of all. I think that what a lot of people need to realize is that Rhoda has done something that a lot of journalists should be doing. And I think that may raise a certain ire among some people even in the journalist fraternity, which is she's built up a relationship with key people in the society of Trinidad and Tobago who trust her by sharing with her their particular viewpoint, perspective, ideas, whatever the case may be.
Right.
There's also another set of people who do not have a voice, but who take advantage of Rhoda's openness to be able to share with her certain information that the public should be aware of. I think that is where she sits in the middle of that reservoir of information, which does create some jealousy, does create some fear, and obviously creates some misunderstanding. And I
It
think
takes some bravery to share it too.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's why I was saying that it is not fair to say that she's outspoken. I think that what is quite clear here is that she's seen a hole in the public discourse
Yeah.
and has sought to fill it. And that really is what is the heart of it. And if more people were, as you use the word brave, but I would say that if more people were as determined as she is to seek out those areas of public distrust and everything else, all our societies would be better off. And in every country across this Caribbean, there are people like Rhoda who are not afraid to face up and dig out and present, etc. There's stories I can tell you about Rhoda going up against the President of the Republic and pointing out quite clearly that something was very wrong with the President of the Republic getting government accommodation while the official residence is being fixed, and also getting housing allowances and other support, etc., which went contrary to everything that was part of the established thing, etc. So the calling out, I think, is what is at the heart of Rhoda's work, and I stand with her. I mean, Ray, against everybody else, she talked about a death threat, for instance, or death threats and so on. I know that during the time when she really called out the president, she was under extreme pressure. Thank God she had a good lawyer backing her. But I went out of my way to demonstrate publicly that I supported her in her work.
Can I give a story, Julian? Because I think it's an important story for me to give.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I decided to have a press conference to talk about where the legal case was going, because as he said, I have a very solid lawyer. He's a friend of mine, but he's also a very, very, very sharp lawyer. And we had decided that we were going to take the issue of the president and the housing allowance as far along the path as we could take it, right? And I had decided that I was going to hire a Queen's Counsel from the United Kingdom and get an opinion from the Queen's Counsel, and I was going to pay for all of this out of pocket, right? Okay. And so we called
because you're rich.
That's what they thought as well.
That's what people think, but that's not necessarily the case. In any case, I decided to call a press conference, and I'm not gonna lie, I was scared bad that morning, like really, really, really nervous. And I'm heading to the shower. Just as I'm heading to the shower, the phone rings. And the phone rings, and a person starts asking me a slew of questions, like a barrage of questions, one after the other. It was Julian basically asking me the questions that reporters would ask
We'll
me
ask you.
at the press conference, and making sure that I was ready to be able to answer the questions. And then he said to me, he says, I am going to make sure that you have at least one familiar face in that audience today. Let me tell you something. You all can't even begin to understand how much I love this man. You can't understand how much.
You go public with it.
Listen, we can understand because and that is significant and well deserved high praise. You know, when Rogers described us, I think, once as the virgins of media. So you know what he's
You get that good there, Carmen.
So let me then explain to those who don't understand or appreciate. The fact is that these three guys are not media people in the first place. They are frustrated Caribbean people living in the UK and really would like to come home to the Caribbean and do something about the Caribbean. But since that is not possible, they've decided that they would get together and set up this West Indies Global and create a platform for discussion and hopefully solutions to what the Caribbean is facing.
absolutely.
So they have now done, and I said this to Rhoda yesterday, they have now done something that many of us have been dreaming about, etc. How do we bring, how do you bring the diaspora, which is huge, back into the national conversations across the Caribbean? This is what these guys are doing, and I'm saying you are virgins now, but you are on your way to being real pros, because I'm aware of some of the behind the scenes activities that you guys have used and conducted to be able to get where you are. The fact that you're doing this show live is shows up a lot of people who should be doing it.
No, you're right.
But I thank you for that.
Thank you, Julian. Thank
and
you.
I don't mind being a late bloomer. I'm okay with that.
You really can't underestimate what you're doing, if only because you're making it something that is accessible to people at their own level.
Yes. And that's the aim.
It's not flying over anybody's head at all. And you're all three very handsome, very, very, very easy to get along with, lovely personalities. So you do not underestimate any of what you're doing there at all.
No,
This is substantial work, Mark. I just wanted to just put it quickly in perspective, because I think that a lot of people now are realizing, if we can thank COVID for anything at all, which is very, very hard to do, is the fact that this great realization that communication now does not take multi-million dollars to be able to do what you're doing right now.
No.
The only thing now that is missing is how does something like this get supported? In other words, monetized, and I suspect that will come along. But I think the fact that this is a very critical foundation of communication for the region, and I would like to encourage all the people who are watching and listening and checking, etc., to just keep sharing and encouraging more and more people to be here as part of that audience, because this is vital. We have to talk about what is happening in our region.
Yes.
Not just talk, but also try to help find some solutions, because the days of relying only on the politicians to be able to do things, etc., long time gone. I mean, they failed us from the Federation right back to today, because we as Caribbean people have a history, one, of moving around and exploring and whatever else, etc. That's why you're in England. That's why people in the US and in Canada, etc. And I'm in Jamaica and people in Montserrat and so on and so on and so on. We have always been a moving people.
Absolutely.
We didn't need a Treaty of Chaguaramas or the Treaty of Bastille to tell us that we have freedom of movement.
You're allowed to move.
Indeed.
So that the politicians who interlope themselves in this creative movement of people really need to stand back and let the Caribbean people do for the Caribbean what is best for this region. That really is the heart of much of my work and my experiences across this region, etc.
Too many
thank God
barriers
for the opportunity. I mean, after 5 years in Trinidad working, a prime minister and his people decide, hey, Julian Rogers can't have a work permit.
Exactly.
A prime minister who sits down at the CARICOM summit and talks about freedom of movement
and integration,
and
exactly,
and integration, etc.
Hypocrisy.
Contradiction.
Come put the Caribbean Court of Justice in Port of Spain, etc. etc. I mean, it's dishonesty. That's what it is.
And listen, Rogers, you mentioned a really interesting point there, because the last time we had you on, we talked about Liat, and you've just really mentioned there, we love to move around the region as people. Since we last spoke to you, we've seen the demise of Liat. And, if aviation around the region is looking very, very challenging. I wonder if you've had any thoughts subsequent to that conversation and where we are now with our regional transport.
Well, I can only tell you that I don't think that Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua Barbuda, would be very happy to hear you say the demise of Liat. Because
at this point in time, it looks like
you're right. In other words, he's put himself on the line to say that he's not prepared to let Liat collapse or disappear, etc. And he's prepared to put some money where his mouth is and hopefully get things. So that is a work in progress. I mean, it's sad because it isn't one other. I mean, Liat is a Caribbean institution, very much like UE, just like the University of West Indies, etc. And you look back at the history of Liat over nearly 50 years. You talk about an institution that is served this region consistently over a period of time. I mean, forget about leave Ireland anytime and all that kind of thing. Those are historical things. Because in the recent past, Liat has had like the best on-time performance of many airlines in the world, for that matter. So that running the airline itself faced one very difficult challenge, and that was clearly enunciated in a study conducted by the Caribbean Development Bank, which showed that Liat, which my journalist friends would never stop saying that it's cash-strapped, and no matter how many times you tell them that using the term cash-strapped is really not it. But the fact is that all of us know that traveling across the Caribbean using Liat was a very expensive prospect. And that the majority of the money we paid went into taxes for the governments.
Yeah.
So if you travel from Barbados to Antigua and you did the hop as opposed to the direct, and the aircraft left Barbados and went to St. Lucia, you paid a tax there.
Taxes
you
every
paid
time.
a tax for the fact that the aircraft landed in Dominica, etc. So every step of the way, Caribbean governments are picking up money for, as far as they're concerned, for the infrastructure they're providing for aviation and so on. But what is like penny wise and pound foolish.
Yes.
The CDB report showed clearly, if you reduce those taxes, allowed for cheaper travel within the region, more people will travel. If more people will travel, what would that mean? It would mean then that they have to get more, be viable, more aircraft. I mean, because Caribbean people need to move around. Look at the opportunity that presents itself right now.
That is the point.
We're not getting tourists from North America and Europe, but we should be our own tourists.
Well, exactly. And
Absolutely.
Katie's just asking the question. Katie, I think Julian answered it there regarding taxes as well. When you did the Central Bank Economic Forum, Caribbean Economic Forum on tourism, I watched that one from beginning to end, and it was a great conversation. But I left there so annoyed because we started the conversation patting ourselves on the back on our backs, standing like George Bush saying mission accomplished regarding COVID. We talked about 22
Iraq.
million people within the region, and that's English speaking, French speaking, Spanish speaking, and what's not as well. And we talk about that, and we say it's a relatively COVID free zone. And then we turn around and pivot and say, well, let's bring people from the highest hit COVID areas back now. When we could have looked internally and say, no, let's create our own. So my question is, you know my view. My question is, why is a US dollar seem to worth more coming from an American than it is coming from one of our own?
Well,
Why do we value ourselves so less?
Let me just give you a quick point on that one. Back in 2007, remember? Cricket World Cup was hosted across this region.
Yes.
They created one space.
Yes.
If you landed in Barbados to see the test at Kensington Oval,
Yeah.
you would come through immigration, and that immigration access would allow you to go to the next match in St. Lucia, Grenada, Jamaica, Antigua, Barbuda, etc.
Yes.
It worked perfectly.
Yeah.
As soon as the World Cup was finished and the lights went, well, no lights went out in Kensington that night. But as soon as it was finished, they stopped all of that. So that you now go back to the fact that everywhere you land, the immigration guy is asking you the same questions, and he has the authority to give you 6 months or put you in a corner, as the case may be, and tell you some strange things, as the case may be. We have failed.
Yeah.
Continue to fail to realize that the real value we have in the Caribbean is ours.
Right, so-
I need to be able to go, and I mean, in other words, when you hear me talk about the lovely beaches of Antigua and I can get there in 10 minutes, etc., as opposed to be in Jamaica where I need an hour to get to Ocho Rios and so on. I should be able to get on an aircraft and get down to Antigua for less than $500 US. But I tell you, it costs more money to travel from Barbados to Antigua than it is to go from Barbados to Miami, on one of the international corridors.
Exactly.
We got a problem.
Yeah.
Let me-
Jump in there, Rhoda.
I want protectionism, Julian, and it's protectionism because we're not within the Caribbean. We don't see ourselves as the tourists for our own spaces.
That's right.
We don't value ourselves.
Right, exactly. So of course,
So,
it
what do you mean by
will always-
protectionism there? In terms of nations?
It is protectionism in the sense that we don't want to make the borders soft enough for our own selves. So we make all kinds of things possible and available to tourists, right? I mean, when you look at how the tourist industry functions within the Caribbean, it's to make the Caribbean, you put the Caribbean on this velvet bed for external eyes. So European tourists, North American tourists is to make tourists from other parts of the world think of, and that's why we continuously selling sea, sand, and sun tourism. But we don't think about what do we need to do to make the Caribbean appealing to the domestic tourist.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when you start thinking about what you need to do to make the Caribbean appealing to the domestic tourist, then you'll understand how to function like a block, BLOC. Because in moving through Europe, I've seen how easy it is to navigate the borders, right?
Yeah.
You get onto a train in one country and you end up at the train station in several countries into Europe.
Yeah.
And then there's no real problem at all. Once
Because
you have that,
they've made it very porous deliberately.
they've made the borders soft.
They see the value in it.
Yeah. Yes.
Right visa, or you have the right visa waiver, you're able to move, and you're able to move smoothly and get from point A to point B. Nobody's asking you a question. So imagine me being able to leave Trinidad and Tobago and get to, the middle of Europe with the least amount of hassle. And the money that I would have spent is less money than I would have spent if I had to make a similar journey here in the Caribbean. But that's because we're focused on a foreign, European, North American tourist.
Exactly.
And that's because we put more value on their dollar. than we
Exactly.
put-
That's my point.
But a dollar is a
why?
dollar.
A dollar is a dollar. And
I mean, let's just look at the possibilities here, because I think that this is an exciting area that I hope that the people who make decisions about these matters would really wake up and realize what the potential is.
Yeah.
Look at this. This Caribbean has English, French, Spanish, Dutch. Okay? Don't tell me that language is a problem in this Caribbean.
Not an issue.
It is not. It is not. I've done a lot of work, for instance, in Guadeloupe and Martinique. When I get there, everybody wants to speak English because they speak very good English. They learned it in school, etc. So it is not a barrier. In other words, somebody says, "Oh, Mr. Rogers, do you speak French?" And I say, "Yes, I speak as much French as I will get me from here to breakfast and back." And they say, "Well, it's not. It is not a problem." And they in fact, one of the high schools invited me to come and do a lecture to their 5th and 6th form students who were doing English as part of their thing. So language is not a problem. Now, so look at the attractions that are available to us. The ABC Islands of Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, etc. We got St. Martin, of course, which was great for shopping many moons ago, etc. We got Puerto Rico as an option. But then you got all these islands. You go to St. Vincent, for instance, and you get on a boat and go to Bequia. You can go on their ferry anywhere down all their islands.
Exactly. That's my number one place outside of Barbados.
You've got Grenada with Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
Yes.
You've got Antigua with Barbuda, which has the longest beach in the world, in the region, 17 miles long a beach. I mean, we have the attractions.
But Julian,
and we have the accommodation. Let's get to the accommodation.
Yeah, but the issue is not.
We have accommodations, not just hotels now. We got guest houses, we got small hotels, we got apartments, we got villas. So in other words, we have the resources to meet every need at every pocket level, so to speak.
But how do we get those people that Andre mentioned, who are the people who are looking at tourism, to seize this moment? Because moments
we'll send this program. We'll cut out this part of the program. We'll send it to them.
I'm agreeing with Julian there, because I will, when you do the clip for this part of the program, I will send it to the Minister of Tourism because it needs to happen. And I want to add to something Julian was saying there. I've been having a conversation with friends of mine that are in the shipping industry here in Trinidad and Tobago, and I've been asking. We can get a ferry from Trinidad to Tobago.
Yeah.
I don't see that it is impossible to then get a ferry from either from Trinidad to Grenada or from Tobago to Barbados, right? When you're looking at
not an issue.
Right. It's not an issue at all.
No.
While I was in Dominica a couple years ago, spent 3 weeks in Dominica, and there was this ferry passing back and forth on a regular basis. So one day I asked the question, where is ferry going to? The ferry would go to St. Lucia, and then it would come back. It would stop off in Dominica, then it would go to Guadeloupe. And then I realized that if I wanted to, I could go from St. Lucia to Dominica to Guadeloupe, and I could, in between, spend a couple days. So I could decide to leave St. Lucia, get to Dominica, spend a couple days in Dominica if I wanted, then get on that same ferry and go up to Guadeloupe, right? And I thought, why can't we have a situation where even if it's only 1 or 2 islands at a time that have that would be on the ferry route, but each island having its own ferry route to the next island, and you have a system where you can book a ticket that gives you multiple stops to the various islands.
Yes,
exactly.
These things are not difficult to design.
It's not difficult.
Not at all.
It's not difficult.
No.
Listen to me. The ferry service that she's talking about, the Zeal, will take you to St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guadeloupe. Okay? And they in fact also included Antigua and Montserrat on the routes, etc. So there is no stopping. The possibilities are endless in terms of this service. And as Rhoda was talking, it reminded me very much of the federal palm and the federal maple, which were gifts of the Canadian government during the Federation years of 58 to 62. Those two vessels made a greater contribution to Caribbean integration than anything else within that period, because you got students going to Jamaica or coming to Jamaica, in this case to university, And there were students attending university in Jamaica who were from Dominica, Montserrat, Antigua, Grenada, whatever the case may be. And the boats coming down the chain into the Southern Caribbean would make these stops. And these students would get off and be entertained by their fellow students, etc. Well, of course, that ended up with those several marriages and whatever else. So that was integration at its best. We sold off the two boats, and we just floundered along relying on somebody else, as the case may be. It's happened with cargo. It's happened with passengers. Transport across this region is at the very heart of our recovery.
Absolutely.
And until we sit down and look at it very seriously and realize that the movement of goods, Dominica, for instance, has for decades been the breadbasket for Antigua and Barbuda. And you've got Guadeloupe providing food for other. It is there. I mean, and
you got Guyana down south as well.
And you have Guyana
and
down
Suriname.
south, right? And Suriname.
Yes.
And if I want to extend my reach in Caribbean context to Belize, for instance.
Belize, exactly.
Which has so much land that they have cattle roaming, etc. in their whole big project there. And Guyana could feed all of us. And soon they will oil all of us.
Of course. And listen, Julian, we talk about something in transport called suppress demand,
Yes.
And there is so much of that is across the Caribbean. If we start talking about island crawling or island hopping and we get it right, listen, man, the Caribbean becomes an economic powerhouse, the likes of which we've never seen in our lifetime. But it's suppressed.
That is a bubble.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is the bubble.
That is the bubble.
Caribbean travel bubble is what we need to establish once and for
Quick.
all. And stop this matter of, one island says, we'll take you out the bubble and then I take you out the bubble, etc.
No.
Act together.
Act together.
Yeah.
Because I really think the 22 million people that we talk about, if we say what's happening in Florida, what's happening in New York, what's happening in Europe again now, as well. For me,
my New York cup, right?
That's all right.
Don't bring that back in this living room.
To me, close it down and look internal. And the reason why I say that as well, because if what we are experiencing in the Caribbean right now continues on the trajectory that it's looking regarding cases, those countries will have no hesitation in closing us down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've seen in the UK already.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you can't just strike off Trinidad. We don't want
straight off the bubble.
Absolutely.
They will have no hesitation. But we seem to have a little. Exactly. You move from level 3 to 4 or 5 in some cases, and it seems that we just don't seem to be able to act like that, and we seem not to understand the economic power that we have within the region. We still seem to think that if Barbados open up, that all the Guyanese can come here and don't go anywhere, don't go back. And Jamaica think everyone gonna move there because they're the best and all that kind of stuff. Trinidad think everyone is gonna go there because most people are gonna go home.
I don't think the opportunities are clear.
People are gonna go home, and the thing about it is that's how immigrants tended to be. You guys are in the UK. If you were in a position where you could come back to the Caribbean on a more regular basis, isn't that what you do?
Yeah.
Yes.
And go beyond the home country,
Of course.
and be able to go across the region and get back to touch base in Barbados for a couple of days, say goodbye to everyone, and come back.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you get to Barbados, too expensive to go anywhere else across the region. But
So
that's
I'm sure we're not the only people talking about these opportunities and the value of it and the idea and so on. But there just seems to be something more fundamental in terms of the psyche and the mindset of Caribbean people. And Rhoda mentioned protectionism, which is a more nationalistic bonding. And you mentioned value as well. But it feels as though we either don't think people could afford it or people deserve it. And this seems to be the suppression of these opportunities.
It's a combination of things there, Philip. I really think that part of our problem is self-esteem and really and truly believing that we are worthy of the things that we give people, right? So we give all kinds of privileges to other people, but we don't necessarily think that we are worthy of the self-same privileges.
Yeah, but you see, you cannot take out from that factor either. You know, we are bombarded with what looks good. You know, everybody now is thinking we can't go anywhere, but we can't wait to get back to New York. We can't wait to get back to Miami. We can't wait to get back to London. Nobody's thinking, you know what, I would love to go to Guadeloupe or Martinique or go to Antigua, because what we see through media influences how we think and value
Agreed.
the things that we think are valuable.
That was the point I was going to go.
Exactly.
Maybe this is, if it's a self-esteem problem, there are other things that we maybe need to be looking at.
Yes.
In terms of funding and investing in. And
No, I agree. I agree.
I think that I come back to, I know there's a comment just now about COVID making us think a little differently. The reality is that these current circumstances require us to think differently in many ways. I mean, it's affected our education, our work, and etc. And there clearly is a need for some kind of forum. You know, I mean, maybe West Indies Global should be issuing a paper on what the possibilities are for the rest of the region, or, you know, in subject by subject, because you've been talking to people in various areas, as the case may be.
Yeah.
And there was a time when governments did listen to non-governmental organizations, etc., and people who were activists and whatever else, etc. I think that a lot of voices have either been silenced or they've grown tired, for instance, like a voice crying in the wilderness of these modern days. We have just discussed this evening what the possibilities are for saving our tourist sector. Right? In other words, the creation of a bubble that allows Caribbean people to move around the region at a price that really makes sense in terms of air travel, accommodation, meals, whatever the case may be. I mean, look at the devastation that has happened upon the restaurant sector, for instance.
So, Julian, I want to say not just tourism, but once you start talking about saving tourism, you're also talking about saving agriculture and agriculture.
Exactly.
Well,
Absolutely.
I was going to go there by extension. Tourism is just a vehicle for the entire economy. I agree.
You're hitting my pet areas.
Yes.
Which is because I would put agriculture first, but I want to be in a position where I'm generating an environment in which agriculture makes sense. Because if we get visitors coming to these Caribbean territories, they got to eat something, and the only thing they can eat really is a good, genuine Caribbean meal, which is grown in the ground of our region. So there is the real link, because for so long we keep saying, "Oh, the tourists are coming here to eat our food." They don't seriously come here to eat our food. That why would we be advertising that we have French cuisine and this cuisine and whatever else cuisine, etc.
Good point.
It is the adventurous tourist who is interested in the original and indigenous
putting
foods
themselves
and
in some
drinks
doubles
and whatever the case may be. But they're not big in numbers. Caribbean people are big in numbers. If 100 Trinidadians come to Jamaica, they don't come here to eat doubles. They don't come here to eat roti. They come here for jerk.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
They come here to enjoy managed water and all kinds of things like that.
Some go ahead and thing. Yeah, of course.
So we are missing. We're missing the bus where these things are concerned.
Exactly.
And in terms of health, I'll just share with this quickly. There's a situation here in Jamaica where they have hundreds of doctors who don't have jobs. Right. What they call the quota for doctors to be hired by the public sector is full right now.
Right.
But look, we are in a serious situation. Why can't we get these doctors who should forget about the fact that they want to work at the Kingston General Hospital and whatever else and so on and so on and so on. Get into the communities where they are really needed.
Yeah.
That would open up a whole new landscape for their practice, for instance. Because a lot of them, a lot of doctors have boasted the fact that they've gone and done medicine in African countries and been displaced and all that kind of thing. We need them to do this work here among plain ordinary folks.
Yes. Yes.
Who would value their contribution far more than the matter of collecting $100 a visit, as the case may be. They'll make money later on and gradually. You can't get rich overnight.
I agree. Hey guys, let's
something that you said there. Sorry, Andre, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to take a pause. Let's come up for air for 2 seconds. I just want to thank everyone for joining our conversation. Look, no, seriously, this has been great. And these are the kind of conversations when we said at We Global that we always say we want, you know. And I think these are based on the comments that I'm seeing. You see so many coming up on the screen. And yes, we are seeing them, guys. It's just sometimes we can't get to them as the conversation is going and folks are in full swing. But we're saying it, so keep them coming. And we put them up on screen and get others into the conversation as well. But I think these are the conversations that right around the region we need to be having. And it's us having a conversation among ourselves, about ourselves, and not waiting for somebody to tell us from outside to tell us what we need to do. Some of the answers are right here among us, you know, and we need to have these conversations. So I want to say thank you to everyone that's joining. And just a quick pause here. If you haven't already, join us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, as well as Instagram. We have these conversations. Not always, I must say, not always as excitable as this bunch that we got here, but always very interesting, entertaining, and informative. And we just look to have those conversations as well. Go ahead, Philip.
And always Caribbean.
And always Caribbean.
You sort of touched on something I was going to mention there, Andre, because Julian talked about writing a paper with recommendations and so on. I am pretty sure right now,
you better believe it. You better believe it.
Different places in Europe, in the US, writing these papers.
Yes.
And trying to find ways of getting them in front of heads of state in the Caribbean to sort of recommend them and make their own money. Now, even if we write a paper and we're able to issue these recommendations,
right,
they're probably not going to be heard. They're probably not going to be listened to and so on. What are other ways that we can go about influencing government to act and do things in a way that's really prosperous for the Caribbean, besides paper writing?
You'd have to get the private sector that can apply pressure to the government, because there's always a relationship between business people and governments. So you need to get business people to be able to apply pressure. One of the things that for me would be important in this entire discussion that we're having here about how to free up a Caribbean economy through ease of movement, certainly in a time of COVID. Is the way it will impact our own personal tastes. For instance, if I want syrup to put on something, right? And I go into the groceries here, the syrup that I'm likely to get is Aunt Jemima syrup from the United States. Nobody can explain to me why I can't get nutmeg syrup from Grenada, like normal in my grocery. Nobody can explain that to me. There is a brand of coffee that I stumbled upon in Dominica. There are things that I purchased in Barbados. There is June plum juice and June plum jam and those things that I stumbled upon in Jamaica. And well, don't get me started on patties, right?
When you say June plum, you mean golden apple.
Golden apple, and in my country,
hey, you trying to correct our guest? You trying to tell her to say, Philip? You trying to tell her to say it right? Say it the right way.
She's trying to tell me to say it the Bajan way.
Not that we are always right. Not that we are always right.
There are these 3 words for the one fruit, right?
Hey.
June plum, golden apple.
Golden apple, exactly.
But my point is, those products are being made. Those products are available, but where are those products going to? Other markets, foreign markets, because the products are not on my shelves here. So why can't I be in a position where I am spending money that is going back into the governments of this region or into the pockets of the manufacturers of the region?
Exactly. I mean, that's a really good point, because one of my pet peeves long time ago was something as simple as baby food. Which the raw material that most of them are using are the fruits that are readily available right across the region. But we have to go in the supermarket and buy Johnson's some kind of product or some other product. Gerber, that's the name. And that what's not. And I'm going, but hang on. This is the same thing as crushing up a banana that on my tree behind there and putting it in the baby. why are we not manufacturing that stuff on a large scale for our own kids?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that we should be doing. On the tourism point, I don't want to move away too quickly because I think there's two ends to the tourism side, and this is one that I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to show us these two pictures here.
Oh yeah.
And this is St. Lucia, unspoiled, and this is the Cabot region. And now what you want to see there, what they're going to do there now is replace all that loveliness there with pretty much this. And this is an important conversation, I think, for the entire region, because it's one that we've been hearing from the time I was a child. If anyone knows the song by the mighty Gabby in Barbados, Jack, don't want me to bathe on my beach. I think there's the Yida project going on in Antigua as well. In Barbados, you got the Gold Coast right along there where people complain, and now we got this conversation happening in St. Lucia. And again, this always comes back to me of what are we willing to give away under the guise of development and using tourism, and I'm gonna let you. We can have that conversation. I've got some of the points I want to make on it, but this is a huge thing for me.
This is a disaster for us, to be honest, because we can go around this cycle so many times, and every island who's represented in the comments here this evening will probably have a story, because the developers come with a great plan. They're going to do a wonderful job. They're going to retain access for the locals. But, 10 years in, you're lucky if you can peep through to get to the beach, And what is always fascinating, and you
can't walk through the hotel.
Of course not. No, you can't come in here just like that, right? And we talk about this all the time. We use the UK as a good example. We on holiday, Phil. We will drive down the coastline of England. And you will always realize you can always look out to the sea. Why? Because development is landside, right? But when these developers go to the Caribbean, for some reason, we always feel as though we have to give them the coast side to develop, to block off all the view, to restrict the access, and then locals get squeezed out. I just think that, what's happening in St. Lucia is something that collectively as Caribbean people, we have to help inform, because we've all seen it. And we all know where it goes.
Yeah.
It's a new form of colonization.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
Go ahead,
tourism,
Go ahead, Rhoda.
has always been that particular double-edged sword, especially tourism to this part of the world, where and it's because of the nature of the tourism, because it's always ever been catering to foreign tastes, right? And giving them the things that they think they want, and they invariably want a piece of paradise, and a piece of paradise involves beach, right? Some land to put a structure on, and beach. Now we have the same problem here in Trinidad and in Tobago, where the coastline that you're not supposed to be on, because there's a whole piece of legislation about building on the coast. You have families and private individuals and businesses that always get their friends in high places to turn a blind eye, and you end up with properties being built in places that properties ought not to be built.
No. No.
Yeah, I always find it really interesting. I know growing up in Barbados, you go on the west coast, down that whole Sandy Lane, Royal Pavilion, that whole area down there, and sometimes to get to the beach, you got to walk 2 miles up to get to the beach you want to go to 2 miles down, and even sometimes you're not even encouraged, or you're discouraged from being in that spot because of they got the hotel cheers and what's not, despite saying to you there's no private beaches.
But this is not for you.
Yeah, this isn't for you. Or you left to squeeze through this little track that you can't even get your cooler down through. It's not lit or anything like that. So everything, but then, everything is done to say, this isn't for you. But then in the press saying, oh no, but we've provided access to the sea and we don't discourage anybody from coming. I really think this is something that Caribbean people need to support each other on, and recognize it's not something that is isolated in individual islands. It's something that's going right across the region.
Right across the region.
And things like this reinforce that low self-esteem that Rhoda was talking about.
Exactly, Philip. But we also need to be aware of our legislation, and that for me, from 2011 to now, it's the thing that pushes me the most. I feel as if we don't, let me talk about Trinidad and Tobago. We're not as aware of our legislation, our laws, as we need to be. So there are lots of things that happen in the public domain blatantly in your face. And if you don't know what the laws are, it doesn't register for you the degree of infringement
Yeah.
of people's rights that are taking place. So we
Yeah.
have in Shagaramas, and Shagaramas is historically a very politicized space for us. During World War II, the Americans would have come, they would have put up a base there, and then we in the independence period, we would have marched to that base to be and insist that the Americans had to give us our land back because they didn't want to give back up the base.
Yeah.
And what has happened since then is you have business interests that have put up structures on the coastline. And the same thing Andre is talking about. You get this dingy little track, right?
Yeah.
Once a public beach. I remember playing on that public beach as a child and having full access to the public beach and people being able to park up and take their palms out to the beach. And I mean, it's not the most perfect beach on the, well, certainly not like the beaches in Barbados, but it's a beach, right? And now you're in a situation, because I would never compare our beaches to the beaches in Barbados, like not ever.
Forget about Tobago.
What was that? Sorry? What?
Don't forget Tobago.
No, well, I mean, the beaches in Tobago, I mean, that's entirely different. So I'm talking about the beaches in Trinidad. I would not compare the beaches in Trinidad to the beaches in Barbados, but it's still a beach and it's still access to
it's still access.
water,
Yeah,
fresh air,
of course.
and sunlight that could kill COVID, right? So,
That's important.
so you're in a situation where you used to have access to this a long stretch of beach, and then a business interest comes in, strikes a deal with the government, right? Whichever government it was, they strike a deal, and the government allows them to put up a water park. This is the irony. On a beach, right? Where you could run wild like a little child, run into water, play cricket on the beach. So you have activities, and then you come and you put up a water park. So
Because the beach isn't good enough.
water, right? Chlorinated water, because a beach in and of itself ain't providing you with enough recreation. So you have to come up with a water park next to the
That's
beach.
crazy.
And it blows one's mind. And you block off the beach to the public. You only have a narrow little path to get onto a little strip of beach now. And you have this big water park. And it's at the expense of the taxpayers because they're not paying the full lease price for the land.
No, and they're getting a sweet deal.
They get a very sweet deal.
Absolutely. And listen, Rogers, we have to discuss the role of media in helping to pull together what the Caribbean needs to do, because this is happening in Antigua, it's happening in Barbados, it's happening in Jamaica. How can we get media to take a more influential role in shaping the discussion around some of these areas where developers are coming, and fair play to the guys in St. Lucia, because there've been some guys in St. Lucia who are absolutely galvanized against this, and rightfully
Using
so.
social media and what's
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think at the risk of giving the media more work or more responsibility than they can take on, I think in all fairness, though, that the public discussion has gone beyond the traditional media, and it has taken on the platform of the social media, etc. Right. I think the greatest difficulty really is not about the discussion, because there is a lot of discussion. The question really is whether the people who can do something about something are listening and are prepared to take action. That, I think, is the real problem here. We've gone from the talk shows now into a lot of the discourse taking place on social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram now being one of the primary channels of communication. But I'm not shying away from the question. I want to share with you something that I shared with students at the University of the West Indies here, who had invited me to talk at the Avery Brown, the 10th Avery Brown Distinguished Lecture. And it really, the heart of what I will say to media today is that much as we have this discussion today, and we are focusing on particular developmental areas, it is incumbent upon the media of the region to recognize what are the most important areas of national life that deserve the greatest attention in their reporting. And I will say that if we, and that's why I was saying to Rhoda that, when she jumped in, when I went to bring the agricultural matter into focus when we're talking about tourism, there are like 5 areas of national life that we need to pay attention to. 1 is agriculture, 2 is health, 3, and I will put the matter of the environment there. There is one area that encompasses all of these, and that is the economy, because the economy is not going to go away. Now, I argue that the media houses of the region must look at all of these key areas. There may be 5 or 6 of them, and become literally subject experts in those areas, where your journalists, your announcers, etc., build a relationship with people in these sectors and help them to tell their stories about the issues they're facing and possible solutions. That, I think, would be the job that I would give to any respectable media house in the region. Because the farmers, and we take our current situation, the farmers of the Caribbean have a story to tell, which is the impact of COVID on them. They were living and depending on the tourist sector for the hotels to buy their foods, etc., their crops. They are also depending on the wider community to buy those crops, whether it's in the market or the supermarket, or whether they're selling it, directly to the consumer, as the case may be. They are the hardest hit of sectors in the region.
Right.
So what are we going to do about them? They're not necessarily getting a direct subsidy from governments, although that has happened in a couple of cases, the case may be.
Yeah.
There clearly is a need for us to recognize the plight that these guys and men and women are in, and commit ourselves to supporting them at a time like this. And if you take every one of those areas, there's a story to tell. Plenty of stories in the health sector. There are there are success stories, there are challenges, and crises to be reported in that sector. We look at energy, for instance, everything from the cost of fuel to put in your vehicle to the price of a 20-pound cylinder to cook food for your family, as the case may be. We take every one of those and focus on exactly what is happening in those sectors. Tell those stories, because those are the stories that are going to force the people who are making decisions for us to make good decisions. Yeah. And I think that is the responsibility. That's the load I would put on media people, and that they should be so bright to be able to refute nonsense when it is put on the table, because that is another responsibility of the media. If we do not know enough about the subject, we cannot help people better understand what the discussion is about.
If we go back a little bit as well, so that means if people are going to become subject matter experts, we probably need to look at the university and education as well.
Well,
in those same areas and reform.
Yeah, and it is happening, but very slowly. For instance, in the media training at the university, I'm aware that they, for instance, will train business reporters. All right. Which is all well and good, because it will force them to deal with the economy and so on. Which of course is an ongoing thing, because I keep saying that my grandmother in Oracabessa in Jamaica, where I come from originally, and my ancestors come from there. If you believe that, you believe anything else I tell you. The fact is that we have to explain to her what the Minister of Finance means when he says he's going to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. Yeah. She should not come away from watching the screen and saying, well, I'm not interested in the budget because he's really not talking to me. And I'm only waiting until he gets to the end of the budget where he's either putting on taxes or taking off taxes, as the case may be.
Yeah.
There are issues within that whole framework which must be understood by everybody. Why?
But-
Because those people ultimately turn around and vote for people to run
Yeah.
these countries. So they
Based
must
on
understand the
personality.
issues, and rather than being based on personalities and who can
Yeah.
give me a fridge and a flat screen TV in the weeks leading up to the election.
But are we a bit myopic though in then the way how we look at careers in the Caribbean then, and maybe that explains as well, Rhoda, your role. And from what I've been watching, how great it is and refreshing it is, because very often, to get into media, you've got to study a mass comm degree. To do X, you've got to have studied this particular topic area. I see political scientists at elections all across TV explaining economic reform and economic stuff, and I'm like, hang on, that's not you don't, I don't trust you to tell me about that. We're not getting the experts to widen the areas that they can go into and therefore inform the people. So we still look too narrow at the way who we look to.
Yep.
Okay. I would say yes and no. Yes,
Right.
in that we tend to have very myopic views about who can do what and what they can do and can't do.
Yes.
And I like to remind people very regularly, because a lot of people aren't quite sure about what I do anymore, right? Because people think people think
As long as you sure.
Is it the wake?
It might be that, right? But people, because people have multiple concepts about what I do. But I remind people all the time, I work in education. That's what pays the bills, right? So I am a teacher first and foremost, and that's why I think a lot of my approach it informs a lot of my approach, because I always feel I need to have context, I need to explain things, I need to have working examples, I need to have information.
Yeah.
But I don't think that any one thing ought to prevent anybody from straddling multiple worlds. I'm also not convinced that in Trinidad and Tobago we think people have to study a particular degree to become a journalist, because here in our journalism environment, many of the media houses have hired persons in the past and even in the present that don't have degrees in anything to do with media and journalism, right? So people come into the profession, they apply, it is rare to see a job description or to see an advertisement for jobs in the media that's insisting that you have to have this degree and that degree and
or something like
right,
that. Yeah.
mass comm, so you can get into the career.
That's
My
good.
concern remains whether training takes place. Now, I've seen editors in chief and I've seen heads of news houses try to put things in place, but it's never ever really been consistently done. You need to, when you bring talent on board, you need to consistently train your talent. You need to expose your talent. Your talent needs to be reading on a regular basis. Your talent needs to be honing their craft on a regular basis. They need to be exposed to different kinds of journalism in different parts of the world. All of those things need to happen. They need to be engaged in critical thinking. And I think here, because I can't speak for the rest of the region at all, Julian is in a much better place to speak about how media is functioning regionally. But here in Trinidad and Tobago, journalism has hit a rut. And it has hit a rut because of the impact of politics on the world of journalism, especially since the careers are poorly paid careers. And because the careers are poorly paid careers, you're in a position where whoever has a lobby, whether it's the business, whether it's the private sector or the public sector. And by public sector, I'm really referring to political parties. So maybe I should just say private sector, because political parties here just function like businesses in a sense too, right? So you have your lobbies and you have decided that you need to have your lobby be promoted in some form or fashion in print and visual media. And you find someone and you give that person access. You give that person access to information. You give that person inducements as well, whether it's cash kind, whatever it is, inducements. And what you get to do then is control the information and the narrative that they are
Yeah.
putting out into the public domain.
Yeah.
And more, what you're seeing being produced is writing that is poor. The writing is poor writing, one. The writing is imbalanced writing, two. The writing does not engage in any sort of critical thinking. So you read a piece and your brain has made no journey at all, right? No journey in thinking has happened. It does not stimulate you in any form or fashion. And invariably, you end up having to fact check the journalists.
Wow.
And it's one of the things that I ended up doing a lot here, fact checking journalists. And it started it started by accident. I would listen to what was taking place in the parliament, which tells you, how much activity going on in my life that I could be sitting down and listening to parliamentary debates, right? So I'm listening to parliamentary debates, and I listen to parliamentary debates as a regular thing now. Sometimes when I'm doing vegetable prep on a Saturday, if I'm not speaking to handsome gentlemen,
We call it vegetable prep. Yeah.
Vegetable prep.
Don't let me get there. Don't let me get there.
I'm not doing vegetable prep when I'm doing vegetable prep on a Saturday, I put on the YouTube and replay the sitting from the Friday evening, and I would be listening to it. Now I would back then I'd have gotten up on a Saturday morning and I'm reading the newspaper. So imagine one Saturday morning, I've read the newspaper, I have put on the replay of a sitting in Parliament, I'm hearing what the MP is saying, and I'm like, but that's not what's in the newspapers today. That's not what's in the newspapers at all. As a matter of fact, it's twisted. And I then began to listen on a regular basis. And this would have been back in 2011. And when I started listening to the Joint Select Committee hearings on a regular basis and to the sittings in Parliament on a regular basis, I began to understand the volume of misinformation that was taking place from the daily newspapers. And I mean, by that time, I know who the reporters are. I know who the editors are. They're on my phone now. So when I see the foolishness, I WhatsApp them directly. And I ask, what foolishness is this? This is not what was said. Yeah. What are you trying to do? Right? And I guess in that way, that's one of the reasons people might think that I am so outspoken. But I am insulted when you lie to me in that way. Because what you're saying to me that you are aware that I am not going to make the effort to listen to this thing for myself, so you can take the liberty of lying to me.
And that's what I was going to say, accountability, because you're holding people accountable and holding their feet to the fire. And you wonder sometimes if that is there across the region, or we just taking in what we're told, but we're not holding journalists and media houses and politicians. I don't want to put it all on the journalists and media, and we're not holding our politicians accountable for things they say, what they do, how they behave, and policies that they bring into act.
Well,
and we're not holding them.
Yeah, I have to tell you, because Rhoda has given me this job of talking about the state of the media in the rest of the Caribbean outside of Trinidad and Tobago. But the reality is we have a mixed bag. And I have to tell you that the journalist lot is not an easy one. If I'm to paraphrase HMS Pinafore, Rhoda is right that a number of journalists have come under influence of special interests of one kind or another. And yes, there are instances of inducement, etc. There are also instances of people losing their jobs as a result of not towing the line, for that matter, or coming under some of the pressure.
Yeah.
The difficulty the major difficulty in a lot of the territories really is how small the industry is, and therefore a lot of people don't have a lot of options, and therefore there's a genuine pressure in many cases. Particularly, politicians have had, I know of one guy in Barbados, for instance, who a deceased politician put so much pressure on him that he left Barbados and went to Canada and never returned for the rest of his time. There is genuine pressure there, and I don't want to discount that, because the news editors of the day are under pressure, and they're also under commercial pressure as well. because the advertising dollar is really at the very heart of sustaining a lot of the entities. And they're under pressure from governments, for instance, who are threatening from time to time, "Well, we won't give you any advertising," etc. And that can be a very persuasive tool. Although many media houses are on record of fortunately telling the politicians and the governments, etc., where to get off with that kind of thing, and also some of the leaders in the private sector. The overall, I mean, we cannot discount the difficulty of a small society where everybody knows everybody. And if Rhoda, for instance, was living and working in a great landmass where people didn't know where she lived and didn't see her driving down the road and could ask somebody for her address and get it readily, it'd be a different matter. And that really bothers me, because the reality is that truth really should not be subject to that kind of fear in its journey to the populace. So I look back at my experiences across this region, and a lot of people meet me sometimes and they make a joke and they say, "Oh, you're the guy who's been tossed out of more Caribbean countries than there are in CARICOM." and I say, I don't have enough time to tell you the real truth and the real story. I have to write the savannah and invite everybody there to be able to tell you exactly what's happened. Yeah. But it's not been easy, and it's not been easy from the point of view that I know that there are politicians who will not sit down to be interviewed by me. The late Patrick Manning was determined that he would never ever sit down. I mean, he told me that to my face when CARICOM was doing a particular exercise, and they asked me to go and ask him 2 questions so that they could get his responses on tape. And when I turned up, he says, "No, I'm not doing this with Julian Rogers." And I said, "But Prime Minister, I mean, CARICOM asked me to ask you a question. That's it." He says, "All right, okay." But it was reluctant. So the weakness though that we have right now, and I've been saying this to newsrooms across this region, is we need to send a high quality reporter to interview the leaders of this country, and ministers of finance and whatever else. Don't send the little youngster who's just been with you for 6 months or a year to be able to talk to Comember in Trinidad, because we know he's the Minister of Finance. He's got a particular personality that will turn you off if you don't appreciate what that personality is. Because he puts up a defense immediately. Yeah. And if you're not serious and understand that is his defense, that you will be turned away and you'll be frustrated and whatever else. I mean, I saw a reporter in Trinidad the other day literally trying to buttonhole him as he was going into Parliament, and he wouldn't take her on, and so on and so on. That's his personality, all right? But it doesn't say that he doesn't really want to talk to the media. So he would not do that to a Rhoda or to Julian Rogers, because we would be so in his face. But most importantly, there's another element to this. That is, the in your face does not always work. There's a famous incident in Trinidad where a news director that I hired many moons ago decided that he wanted to do this one-on-one interview show. And he did one interview, and he was literally sitting, before COVID, right? So he was like this in the guest face. And that was one interview. He did a second one like that, and nobody else would come again and be on his show, etc. And that was the end of that. I always say that there's a certain level of respect that is due to whoever you're interviewing. All right? And therefore, if respect begets respect, as far as I'm concerned. People that you want to talk to, need to know that or understand that you understand what the hell you're talking about in asking them, etc.
Of course.
And in situations where you have to press them, not in the face like that, but very, the current Prime Minister of Antigua Barbuda, Gaston Brown, says when I did an interview with him years ago, and at the end of it, I met him in the street afterwards, only to show you how small these countries are. And he said to me, "Boy, people say that you give me a hard time this morning." And I said, "Look, Prime Minister, he wasn't Prime Minister then. He was a member of Parliament, opposition, but he was an MP. He was an opposition leader." And I said, "But boss, I didn't give you a hard time." He says, "How do you mean you didn't give me a hard time? When you went down very quietly in your voice and said, Mr. Brown, so. He says, that's when you are the most dangerous reporter."
But Julian, after all this, I saw Dwayne Haynes ask, when is the book coming?
Yeah, man.
And I saw Alison Leacock put something in there as well along similar lines.
Yeah. Come on. Give me some breaking news.
Yeah,
Breaking news on it.
Give us the scoop here now.
The scoop is that I have written the first chapter.
Okay, here we go.
Of a book which I've titled "And I Did." Because all of you and many more people who, in my recounting of my experiences in the Caribbean, say, "Boy, Rogers, you should write a book." And I say, "And I did."
I like it.
I like that. That's good. That's really good.
So I'm telling you, I wrote the first chapter.
Good.
And my beloved daughter Shani in London, who is a graduate of Leicester University. She says that I'm not going to be a newsman like you, so forget about that. But she's working on in terms of what I'm saying. She's an online specialist, etc.
Yes. Yeah.
And managing the online presence for the University of London Arts. Yeah. But I sent the first chapter to her, and I said, "Shani, read this and help me edit." And I have to tell you, she is a wicked editor. Because last week she called me up and says, "Dad, let's do this." And she started to read and to finesse the copy, etc. One thing struck me is that she knows the story of me better than I do, because she started to say, "But hold on, Dad, you missed that, and you need to tell that story about how Gabby taught you to swim in Montserrat when you were 30 years old, as opposed to when you had your affairs back in thing, and so on and so on and so on." So I've done the first chapter. I've mapped out what other succeeding chapters would be. And Ian Randall, who's a publisher here in Jamaica and a very good friend of mine, I sent a chapter to him, and I said, "But Ian, you need to tell me what's happening, man. Am I writing foolishness or not?" He says, "Julian, I'll tell you one thing. Keep writing.
Yeah.
Set aside time and just keep writing. I don't want to really bother you with what you did in first chapter and whatever else." So, but for a long time, I've been always trying to figure out, if I had to write these experiences, how would I do it? And so I've worked out now that I can capture these experiences by looking through where I work, for instance, So I started off in the first chapter by talking about my school days and early years, and then I ended up at Rediffusion, and then I now will move on to entering the advertising public relations area. I can then talk about Montserrat, I can talk about Antigua, and eventually I can talk
I was going to say, Rediffusion, you now got chapters to write, man.
I hope that none of the juice don't get edited out, because we got to make sure that this is a bald head book.
From here to bald head.
I trust my editor.
So listen, Rhoda, we're gonna say now that COVID is past, and the guys are coming down to Trinidad, and we are coming around to you, not a Saturday evening, because we know you do the preparation on a Saturday evening. We come in for Sunday lunch. What we eating?
What?
If you ended up here today, if you ended
I tell you, Rhoda, right fella you pick, you see how he invite himself at you? You didn't know this man then.
No, I didn't. And I didn't even realize that things would have progressed so quickly. Between
Yeah. He just move fast. He just move fast.
It must be the hair. It must be the hair.
Rhoda, I will only say one thing to you, Rhoda.
What's that?
Watch those Bayesian men.
Oh my lord.
Well, Julian,
Let me put down my wine and get on the water, bro.
long since thought of myself as a huge proponent of CARICOM relations, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and I feel like
Minister of Foreign Affairs.
yes, exactly. Right? And if this is the way to bridge the gap between the islands, Julian, I'm willing to take that hit for the team.
Yeah. Talk the talk. You gotta walk the walk.
Exactly. I can't be here talking about making the border soft for people, and then I'm putting up a hard front for Mark. No.
Put on the pot. Put on the pot. Mark, you walk right into that here, man.
Boy, look, this is one of the hottest living rooms I've been in for a long time.
So yesterday,
Pepper sauce there. Get this Scotch bonnet there, Julian.
Anyway, let me hear what we're eating.
But I sent Julian a picture of it yesterday, right? Because
Yes.
after I was prepping. So
Curry
I did for my lunch today. I did curried corn. But let me explain it properly.
Explain.
So you all corn, right? Corn and
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
good.
So
Good day.
I cut that up and I curried the corn. Then I turned, so it's like a corn soup, but made with curried corn. So it's there right now in the slow cooker. I had it on I started it yesterday and I put it on this morning. So everything should be nice and soft and ready at this point in time. But since I know, because it was just really me, I was fixing lunch for today.
Andre, I sent it to you.
Right. But since
The curry corn is in your WhatsApp.
right,
It
if
does.
Mark is coming over for lunch, especially since I know this is, the weight of CARICOM relations is now hanging on my shoulder.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right?
And things between Trinidad and Barbados was a little tense for a while there. So we gotta diffuse that.
Make a Bajan macaroni pie.
Ooh.
Because how we do a macaroni pie in Trinidad is a little bit different, right?
Okay.
So I'd learn to make a Bajan macaroni pie in deference to him, and I'd make sure that there was callaloo and stewed chicken and a nice fresh salad, and all of those things would be there.
What?
All of that?
Wow. Wow.
Wait, Mark, you bringing the fellas or you going by yourself?
No. I think all in.
So going back to the
Fantastic.
soup, though. Going back to this soup.
The curry soup?
As well.
But the soup is lovely. Curried corn. I don't know if you all have ever tried it, but if you
Never
know
had
how
it.
to,
I haven't,
If you know
no.
how, do you all know how to curry anything at all? You know how to curry meat? So just making sure, once you know how to curry meat.
You want butter it up and then slap me across my head, man.
Listen, I don't want to make no assumptions here. I don't want to make no assumptions here.
Listen, you're talking to 4 Caribbean men here, man.
Good.
Come on.
So then all you need to do is substitute the corn for the meat instead. And you put that in, and then you pouring in coconut milk on it, and you let that simmer, and it is one of the most delicious things ever.
Wow.
You got me in there ready.
Andre, show the people the curried corn. I sent it to you.
Oh, can I get it up right now? You make me gotta go for my water now. I put down the wine now. So water now. This thing.
Well, listen, let me get a last word from you then, Rogers. It's been great having you again in the living room live. Tremendous as always, and full of so much inspiration and wisdom. Because and again, thank you for the words of appreciation for We Global, and it is on people like you whose shoulders we stand, and we want to absolutely make sure we do this right, and try and make this region smaller through the tools that we have available to us in this generation. What's your final word for the audience this evening?
Woo! I can't think of one word, so
I know you're a man of many.
yeah. I've been speechless sometimes. No, I really salute you guys. I commend you. I've been trying to tell as many people as possible about this particular work that you're doing, because I think it is so very important. There are so many of us across this region who feel the need to be Caribbean, to be West Indian, even if that may be a bad name to give ourselves. But anyhow, long time past, we are West Indians, we are Caribbeans. I just remain so optimistic about the future of the region.
Yeah.
And it is my job, is my life. Somebody asked me the other day, if you weren't a journalist, what else would you be? And I said, I can't think of anything else I'd like to do or have done. This job gives me, and this vocation, so to speak, gives me an opportunity to always be touching people, sensing things, etc. Sharing perspectives, and hoping that a lot of the things we dream about will come true in our times. Because I've seen the changes in the region.
Yeah.
There are some positives that I think we need to continue to celebrate, and there are other areas which really deserve our critical attention and action. And I'm hoping that the people who make key decisions for us, the political leaders, will come to the realization of that particular responsibility. I might just put in a word here, because the recent chairmanship of CARICOM by Mia Motley in Barbados was refreshing, to say the least.
Yeah.
Because it clearly was somebody who took on the portfolio of speaking and acting for the Caribbean, and her international appearances, etc., didn't just represent Barbados; it represented the Caribbean region, and that was so very refreshing and very important for us to understand that is the way we should speak. We should speak as one voice.
Yeah.
The things that we're concerned about here that we discussed this afternoon are about us.
Yes.
It isn't. This was not a parochial, insular discussion. It was not a narrow focus, except that we focus narrowly on a particular subject area and try to explore and expand possibilities, etc. I would say that other people who feel that they could do a West Indian Global, go ahead and do it, because we need as many platforms as possible to expand the discussion and to hopefully drive the kind of change that we all dream about, etc. So I want to say thank you, guys. I remain ever available to you. Just don't take advantage of me. But
You wouldn't do that.
but I as I said to Andre, I can introduce you to other Rhodas across this region. None comparable to her.
Careful.
But complementary to her.
Yeah,
How you like that? How you like that?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You navigated it well. I think you saw the hole and you jumped up very quickly. You did well there. I saw what you did there. I saw what you did there.
Over to you, Rhoda.
Oh, well, Julian, and thank you so much for that introduction. If I'm going to give my wrap-up comments, I will say this. I went from a diet of, mostly like North American programs. This is a decade ago. Then started to tailor my viewing tastes. Because I want to get to a point that Philip made earlier about media and what we're consuming visually. And then eventually started tailoring what I was looking at to it being things where that featured people of color, right? Persons of color more often than anything else. And then in the last 2 years, I've been trying as much as possible to increase my diet of local programming, and by local I mean Caribbean programming, right? So programs about or on Caribbean people, the Caribbean experience. And I just think what is happening here, what I was exposed to this evening, what I know you are trying to do with We Global gives me a lot of hope. And it also means that there is something new I can add to my Sunday afternoon lineup of things to do and content to look at. And it's stuff that I am exactly right. So while I am doing whatever else I'm doing around the house, I can put this on now and I can listen to a program about us, by us, featuring us, and just listening to topics that apply to me. So I'm, thank you for what you're doing here.
Wow. Amazing. Sorry,
I don't even know what to follow that there now.
Can
A little tear there just now, to be honest with you.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Go ahead, Julian.
Did you ever dream that you would be doing that? This effort that you undertook would be welcomed in the way it has been?
Let me let Andre go first.
That's a big question. There's a yes and a no there. More erring to the side of no. Not that I didn't think that what we could achieve and where we wanted to take it is what people wanted. It was could we, what's the phrase? Would we be able to present it in a way to make it both informative, enjoyable, and entertaining that made them want to consume it? I think that's where my head was, and our head was when we first started doing it. The response has been fantastic, and this evening has been fantastic. So we dreamt of it. I would say I dreamt of it. Did I expect it? I was hoping for it. Let me just say that. I was hopeful. I was hopeful that we recognize the value in us having our own conversations about ourselves, seen through the lens of ourselves and not through the lens of other people telling us who we are.
Yeah.
And that is really what we try to set out to do.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think my concerns are always about how do we keep it sustainable and manageable, as guys with families and other jobs as well.
You do?
Yeah, and then also how do we keep things distinctive? And you also mentioned, Julian, that it would be great to have many more voices, many more forms and manifestations of things like this happening across the Caribbean. We would encourage that, but then how do we maintain a distinctive voice in that sea of others? Or how do we form useful partnerships and collaborations? And then how do we compete if there's a need to compete in a really clear way as well?
Yeah. And I think I would just add to that, whenever you start anything new and you try to birth something that has potential, there's always some nervousness of how it's going to be received and how people are going to value it. And I think the one thing that I know about the Caribbean audience is that they're authentic. If they don't think it's good enough, they'll let you know. And I think what we have seen over the course of the shows that we've done so far is, we're on a good learning journey. We're doing stuff right, and we've got a big opportunity to really sustain and carry on and keep making the Caribbean smaller, because that ultimately is what we want to try to do.
That is a slogan. Making the Caribbean smaller.
I like it. I wrote it down actually when someone, was it you who said it, Philip? I think someone said it.
Mark said it earlier.
I wrote it down.
Yeah, and Philip, let me assure you that when we call for other platforms and other voices doing similar work, etc., you guys are only occupying 3 hours on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Just imagine what the possibilities are of all the other hours that we have.
Exactly.
A whole week of hours to be filled. I mean,
I think that does put it in perspective really well.
Right? Yeah. So you understand where you're coming from now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
Awesome. Look, guys, it's been fantastic. And to our audience who stuck with us for the past 2 hours and 18 minutes or so, I told you, once this team came together and who we had in the living room today, you're going to be wanting more all the time. Rhoda, before we go, though, tell the people where to Tell the people where to find you.
Oh, I'm on
We might
Facebook.
we're sharing, so you've got a platform as well. So thank you for coming on
what
ours.
time?
But
What time you do your show?
I'm gonna put you. Look, we did this for you. Look,
There, right. Oh, you're so kind. So there I am.
Is that you in the
If
picture?
you need, that is me. If you need to find me, just look for Rhoda Bharath, and you can like and follow the page. And it is mostly full of things to do with Trinidad and Tobago, and then whatever else.
we can change that though. We can change that.
Yeah, you guys are definitely going to be. I mean, I do talk about regional things on it. Most recently would have been the Guyana election, and I know I am planning to focus on the Jamaica election when the time gets closer to the election date. But this whole idea of making the Caribbean smaller, I really like that concept, and I like what We Global is about. So I feel that I am going to be on that journey with you all too.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Thank you. Look,
Fantastic.
I want to say thank you guys for joining us, and to all of our audience. Maureen, I see you there as well. Alison Leacock, I saw you joined us earlier. Also, Chris Shell, I saw your comments. Dwayne Haynes, Kieran Reed, you're always with us, and thank you for joining us again as usual. Too many people to mention today. There were so many comments in there, but we saw them and we tried to incorporate your comments into the conversation, even though we may not have mentioned you directly. Carol, thank you for that, for saying it's a great program. We appreciate that, heartily as well. But guys, thank you for joining us in the living room, and to all of the audience that was there today. This is what we do. As Mark said, I think Mark just created our slogan, making the Caribbean smaller.
That's it.
That's what Global is about. And our show, The Living Room, is just one of. Take note, one of. Others are coming. This is the first one. The Living Room, where we come together Sunday evenings, if you're in Eastern Caribbean, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock if you're in Jamaica or in Central Time, and 8 a.m. if you're in the UK. And we just right the world's wrong with conversation, as we would if we were in the Caribbean, sat with friends in the living room. That is what the show is about. So thank you for joining us. And Julian and Rhoda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope
Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much,
You
guys.
hope you'll come back again if we ask.
Yes.
All right.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, that was amazing.
Wow.
Good show.
Wow.
That was like another 15K run.
You understand? You know what? If ever there's a show that tells you you're on the right track and keep going,
Yeah.
this one was needed. That pause in what we needed to happen.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
this conversation, and the comments from the audience as well. We still see so many of them coming in. And guys, thank you so much for joining us, But we need that.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
No, just saying, yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's good.
Normally I can't stop at past 10 o'clock.
You ain't Shannon, right?
You would think he drinks some Rhoda soup.
Actually, I'm going to look for that recipe now.
Curry corn, boy. And some nutmeg
Like it.
syrup.
Indeed. No, I thought that was great. Go ahead, Mark.
It was an awesome conversation. And, sometimes you have to. I love to listen to Julian because I think you get wisdom. And I often, even in work, I like to look around and see those people and have a conversation with those people who've done it, who've been there, who've gone around the block, who can tell you, no, don't do that because we tried that 10, 15 years ago and it was a disaster. They have the experience. And I really value that from him. But then you got Rhoda, who is bringing a very big piece of integrity into a space where it is lacking. And that was just tremendous to listen to how she's navigating her way around the issues in Trinidad and filling that void that is, being left by those who should be bringing the news of the day and the balance of the day to the population. Awesome experience.
As I was listening to them, I was thinking a lot about the generation to come, and looking forward. And I'm really hoping that something that we are able to do is ignite that generation as well, whether it be people working in media as journalists as well, but really switch on something there where they don't stand for the things that our generation or our parents might have stood for when it comes to what comes out of the mouths of politicians, what comes out of the mouths of business leaders and so on. But there's that ability and that tenacity to hold people to
Yeah.
Or even the television shows that we consume. Mark, I think once upon a time you
yes.
mentioned Dukes of Hazzard. Who understood what the Confederate flag on that car meant? We were just going along with it and watching it. And it's only now as time went on you understood. And you're like, but hang on, our adults put that on our TV, given our
Somebody
history.
was buying that for us to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. And I always say all the time, guys, my mantra, valuing ourselves. We need to value ourselves as a people, value our intellect, value our knowledge, value our spending power. Just valuing ourselves is what we need to do. And hopefully, from watching some of the output that we put out there, people get that value and begins to increase it.
And I tell you something, the decision makers in the Caribbean are missing a big trick with this tourism thing, because the buzz that was created around that conversation this afternoon, I tell you, was tremendous.
ready.
Man, the amount of comments I said I saw,
ready.
I would love to go to other places in the
People
region.
are ready.
But the
Appetite
cost.
is there.
Yeah.
Appetite is there.
We're missing a whole trick with that one. I think when I watched that central bank forum, that was the piece that had me so frustrated. I'm like, you just said you got 22 million potentially COVID-free people in our own block. And then you pivot and say, yes, but we want the tourists coming from United States.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Disappointing.
Completely crazy.
Disappointing.
But guys, thank you guys for coming with us on this journey today. It's been 2 hours and 25 minutes. I think someone said it was the fastest 2 hours that went by. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want more, like our page on Facebook, We Global. You can also find us as well on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube, on Instagram as well. Conversations like these every Sunday afternoon, and even more to come going forward as well. And as we said earlier, this is about episode 15, I think it is. Mark, you usually keep me good on these numbers. I always get this number wrong. Is 15 or 16?
We up to 17 now. 17 in the living room.
There you go, 17. So there's a lot of back catalog there for you to go and consume and take a listen to. Put on YouTube as you're doing the dishes, or like Rhoda said, when she's cooking or doing something, just have it on in the background. There's lots there for you to come. When she's prepping on Saturdays, cooking on Sundays.
Yes.
So do that with us. So we just want to say thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good, guys.
Awesome.